Very little of the package is targeted to low and middle income Nebraskans, and the average tax cut for the majority of Nebraskans is really tiny when compared to the tax savings that higher paid Nebraskans would receive.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so I ask the fellow Nebraskans that are out there listening to really dig into this and ask some tough questions. Is this tax package sustainable for the short and long term? Right now, we're experiencing inflation. That impacts businesses and how many projects they're going to take on. We know the interest rate is increasing. That has a great deal of impact. We know that there's tremendous volatility in the stock market. That gives everyone pause. And so for these reasons and a few others, I ask fellow Nebraskans just to keep your eyes open on what this tax package does. I'm all for things that benefit our families, low and middle income families, but keep your eye out on this. You know, what we do is like, how can we attract and retain young families? How can we attract and retain our existing businesses and corporations? And it's something that I hope folks out there that are listening will certainly ask the tough questions of all senators, myself included. So thank you, Mr. President.
Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak. This is your last opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think if Senator Hunt wanted the time, I would yield it to her, but I just would quickly point out that in the context of the broader conversation we've been having, we've got some folks from the Nebraska Association of Behavioral Health Organizations out there talking about the need for behavioral health care in the state, and I think that's been kind of a central point of the broader conversation we've had this year, and making sure that we are adequately funding these resources so people have access to behavioral health care. And I just thought that would be good. So if you have an opportunity to go out and talk to folks, I know they're pulling people out to talk about it, so take that opportunity if you've got it when there's plenty of time to go do something else. So if Senator Hunt, I would yield my remainder of my time to Senator Hunt.
4 minutes, 15 seconds, Senator Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're talking about a generational gap. I had some other thoughts I wanted to share about this. I think that this is common for a lot of things. It didn't take as long for the general public sentiment around being gay to shift, as long as it took the law to shift. Public approval and acceptance and affirmation of gay men and lesbian women was in place long before the marriage equality, the Obergefell decision in the Supreme Court. And I think that we are going to see the same trajectory for trans Americans. I really hope so. I am personally not a believer in that Martin Luther King quote that says, the arc of justice, or what is it, the arc of the universe bends toward justice. This is something that advocates repeat often when times are tough, when it looks like we're not making a lot of progress. We say, well, the arc of the universe bends towards justice, as in, we might not see justice tomorrow, but we're going to keep working on it. Eventually it'll come. I don't personally actually believe in that. I think that progress and justice is an action, not an inevitability. I don't think that it's inevitable that right and just things are going to happen. And the reason I think that is, just from being in the legislature for 5 years, you see how public sentiment can swing one way, and the radical people who are elected to represent them swing the other way. And it's social movement and backlash, this cycle over and over and over again. But one common thing that we hear people who don't understand trans identities say, it's the same thing we used to hear people say about gay identities, which some people still say, which is things like, why, Senator Groney used to always say this, why are you making everything about sex? Nobody cares who you sleep with. And then with this bill 574 from Senator Kauth, it's turned into, don't sexualize kids, you're sexualizing children. And then that morphs into this groomer accusations and pedophile accusations and stuff like that. When really I would earnestly submit that the people introducing these bills are the ones sexualizing kids. They say things like, I have no problem with LGBTQ people, but why do you have to talk about sex so much? Nobody cares who you have sex with. But I would imagine that in reverse. You know, when someone heterosexual, when, you know, a friend says in front of a child, I went out with a guy to a movie last weekend, or my husband and I are having a picnic today, or I'm pregnant, I'm expecting a child, or you're invited to my baby shower, we never say, stop talking about sex. But to hear what you're saying to the LGBTQ community, don't you see that that's the same exact thing? Me putting a picture on my desk of my wife makes some of you come by and think about sex. What does that say about you? Trans kids existing makes some of you think about sex. What does that say about you? They aren't thinking about that. It's not a function of sexuality the way that you guys experience that as adults. And when LGBTQ plus people talk about their normal lives, going on a picnic, going to a baby shower, expecting a child, getting married, going on a date, many people sexualize that for no reason. And we're doing the same thing to kids with this bill, LB 574. That's why I think this is so toxic for raising the temperature politically.
Time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator McKinney.